Okay.
Tonight's talk is based on the teachings of a Romanian elder who reposed in 2011. He was born in 1914, so that makes him 97 years old. It was incredible, especially as his life went through torture prisons, terrible prisons in communist times. Well, even before communist times, he was actually in prison. I'm not going to go into his life. This is Fr Arsenie Papacioca. And he has a book actually out, which is published by St. Helena of Alaskan Monastery. You can get that in English. I do recommend it. It's called Eternity in the Moment. And I'd like to talk about that. And it's a subject I know nothing about. I don't feel qualified, but I feel like I have to share what I found. Okay, this is it, because I feel it's totally inadequate to talk about this idea of eternity in the moment. For me, this is theoretical, philosophical, but I'd hope it be realistic. In a strange way, it feels very real today, probably because of after the fast and then the Paschal celebrations, I feel totally exhausted, but maybe that's a good thing. Living in the moment. Eternity in the moment means that we are living in the moment. We're not living in the future, like I'm getting married next week, and that's all you ever think about because you're getting married. Now, that's not bad, that's not a bad thing, but if you want to live in the moment, in eternity, that is not the way we should be focusing ourselves. We're concerned about the cup final, soccer cup final. You know, Liverpool United, you're worried because they're going to be playing on Saturday, and what are they going to beat? The enemy, the opposition. And so that occupies your mind all day long. This is what you're thinking about. Nothing wrong with watching a soccer match, but it can have it's the attitude on a spiritual level. The other is nostalgia. Now, that doesn't affect young people, I don't think so, but certainly it affects my age as I start thinking about what I did 50 years ago. 70 years ago, I think so as well. But, you know, that is not good because it's total distraction. If I have nostalgia and I get involved in it, it makes you feel sad because the days are gone. And you remember when you're a child, there's only summer unless you're doing winter sports. So the sun is always shining, which in England is, of course, impossible. But that's how I remember it. But this is not important. Personally, I want to live in the moment. And when we live in the moment, we're living in eternity, which is now. It's not something in the future that might happen. It's now, it's happening at this moment. And we are missing out on many things which God is trying to tell us. One of the things he may be trying to tell us about our departure from this world. God removes us when it is appropriate for our salvation. Although it may be very sad that a young person dies, or somebody that was brilliant and they suddenly die, and that's the only thing, oh dear, why? Because that was the moment that God decided that they would receive salvation. God is working with us to save us. He's not sitting in some sort of judgment, although some people might think in those terms, and some may even teach you that, but it's not true. God is very personal. He loves you. Despite what you do, he still loves you, and he's working for your salvation. He's not working for your destruction. He's not working to judge you. That's not an excuse for sin, but you should understand that in a good relationship, which I hope you'll have, later in life, some of the young people, is that when you love somebody, you don't see anything wrong in them. Yeah, it's love, and God's love. God is love. And when we live in the moment instead of tomorrow or yesterday, then we're able to open up to God's message and his voice, which is telling us all the time, offering us opportunities for salvation. It's not a point system. You're not racking up points by doing good things or not doing bad things. It doesn't work like that. In any relationship, it's What is it? I don't know. I really don't know. I marvel at this and I think about it, and I'd like to live in the moment. I don't. I don't live in eternity. I'm aware of it, but on a philosophical level. I want to learn it on a spiritual level. Maybe I'll never do until the day I die, and then suddenly I realise, oh, that's what it's all about. I've always had this thought that when we meet God face to face, that we will recognise him. Ah, that's who you are. That's my personal interpretation. Even anticipating Pascha during Holy Week is again not being able to focus on eternity, because we're thinking, next week, usually for bad reasons, but you know what I mean. And then we're celebrating. It's always what is going to happen tomorrow. But when we think, when we live in eternity, we are conscious that we may die. Now, this is not some sort of pessimistic morbidity. It is a reality, because we will meet God face to face. And of course, we can have some concern for the future. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be practical. But if we put the emphasis on eternity, I believe, then we will be able to put things into perspective. Even that vacation that we're planning next month or something. In other words, if we don't sort of switch off completely, but if we start thinking in those terms, I think that's when we begin to see things in perspective, like, actually, that's not such a good idea after all. I don't think that's a good thing. We shouldn't be doing that. Not, it's wrong, and God's going to punish me if I do it. No, it's nothing like that. It's waking up, a sense of reality. Reality. Father Arsenie, one of his quotes, and I had several quotes here, but this one is saying, for the living Christian world, there is no space. When we live in a Christian world, there is no space. If you live in Kiev, there's no difference between living in Kiev and being on the Holy Mountain, because there's no space between them, spiritually. Living in Yash, there is no difference between living in Yash and living in Moscow. Attending the liturgy in Yash is no difference from attending the liturgy in Moscow. And I don't mean in practice, I mean in reality, because there is no space in eternity. We're all connected, there is nothing. South Park, we're living in the same time as Divyevo. I like to think that, that's my personal wish. So and also I found this, on the pilgrimages we've been, Matushka and I, we've been to various places. When I get back, it feels I'm back home in the altar serving. This is where I belong. It's no different from where I was serving in Belgrade or in Salonika, or wherever I've been, okay, on the Holy Mountain at San Skis. That was a wonderful opportunity. But there's no space. We're all connected. So there's no difference between being in Kiev or Mount Athos, Yash or Moscow, South Park or Divyevo or anywhere else you might be. Everyone is in one place, joined in the same heartbeat. This is a quote from Fr Arsenie. The opposite of that is separation. Living in our own little world, isolated from other people. Maybe not physically isolated, but definitely socially isolated. This is what's so important about church community, that we are a family. Now, being a family is not some sort of idealistic thing, because it's reality, and in families we argue. But because we're a family, we can say, forgive me. You know, we're not sort of living in some sort of wonderland with community. Separation is a deviation from the responsibility of realizing eternity. I have to do my own thing. I can't do something with somebody else. This is you cannot understand eternity in that sense. Eternity in the moment. This comes to the fact that we are not created for ourselves. Though everybody believes that. We're not created for ourselves. We are created for the creation, to interact with it and to interact with other people. That's why we're created. We're not created as isolated individuals. That's not why we're created. It doesn't matter, and this is actually a quote from Fr Arsenie, whether I'm, well, I've changed it slightly, okay. It doesn't matter whether I'm here in America or somewhere else. What matters is that we are all present. We live in the constant presence of God. We should be concerned with living in the present, now, this moment now, here, tonight, this moment now. This is where we should be concentrating, because we are in the presence of God. We live in the constant presence of God, concerned with living in the present. Let the future take care of itself. Don't think about the world. This is a quote from Fr Arsenie. And if you are worried about the way things are going in the world, and who isn't, the world that we know, my country that is not the same anymore, it's gone from what I knew, and the values, everything's changed. What can I do to change it? Nothing. But Fr Arsenie says, if you want to change things, you have to focus on perfection. And when you are perfect, then you can change things. That's rather open-ended, I think, the comment. This is a man who's been a living martyr ever since he was a teenager. He's been imprisoned, persecuted. And these terrible, what was that other person? Matushka, what's that called? Ayud?
Yes.
Yes. Ayud. I mean, unbelievable actually. He was in a cell which was like in a pit. So high walls, and I don't know how he got into it.
Punishment cell.
Punishment cell. But he spent most of his time there. And every day he was beaten. We can't imagine. I mean, a lot of people died, of course, under that regime, and others went mad. They became insane because of that. He's found God. That's the difference. He found God in this terrible hell. And this sometimes, well, let's take this to heart and say that we find God when we're in hell. Remember the quote of Saint Silouan, keep your mind in hell and despair not. So this is where it's coming from. He says, we do not live for the sake of developing knowledge. And he actually talks about what he calls excessive theorizing. This is academic study of theology. Now, there's nothing wrong with it, but when it becomes excessive, and for some people, and that includes bishops and priests, it becomes their life. The life of academia. And it's justified because, you know, it's studying God. But it's not based on experience. Fr Arsenie says it's experience that's important. And the theologians, when they come to a man that is experienced, they learn. I mean, they can't understand how this person can possibly have this knowledge. The person that has this knowledge does not know where it comes from. Well, of course they know where it comes from the Holy Spirit, but they don't, it's not like in academia you can go to a resource and say, well, in a certain time they did this and I've discovered this. I knew somebody who discovered a manuscript actually in 70s that was never seen before. He'd found it and he translated and produced a book on it. He was given a degree from Oxford for his work. I mean, very knowledgeable man, fluent in various ancient languages. I prayed for him. I liked him. We became friends. But he, and I'll give you a name of course, had never experienced anything. How sad. Amazing man to talk to. Knowledge, incredible. But spiritual experience, none. So let us avoid excessive theorizing. Our faith is based on experience. Through experience, we gain abundant knowledge and you don't know the source. Our fathers, ascetics, don't have much theoretical knowledge. We know that. but they are constantly in the presence of God. This is what it's all about. They don't have the academic knowledge. Some are almost semi-illiterate. I remember seeing a signature of Saint Seraphim. And he was illiterate. He wasn't totally illiterate, but you could see by the handwriting that it was, you know, it was great effort to shape letters, like a child learning. Did he have experience? Of course. But what do we seek? We seek just to justify ourselves through knowledge. If I study and I have this knowledge, this is not against, we're not anti-intellectual. I might be, probably, in a sense, but we're not as Orthodox Christians. And immediately I would quote St. Basil the Great, St. John Chrysostom, St. John of Damascus, great theologian. They were all scholars, brilliant in their field, as I mentioned the other day, but they started their life by prayer and asceticism. And St. Basil was a very weak person, health-wise, but he went off into the desert, which should have killed him. You can see he's so delicate. He spent 5 years living in prayer. I don't know what he ate, if he ate anything. And then we have this wonderful, we have the liturgy of St. Basil, we have his writings, his, you know, St. John Chrysostom, the same, St. Gregory the theologian. You look at their lives, they all started off as ascetics. They were doing what we should be doing, living in the presence. To do that, they had to go to the desert. I'm not saying we have to go to the desert. Maybe we do in a psychological sense, all right, not physically. We have to cut ourselves off from certain things which take our focus off eternity. This is big stuff. This is very, very challenging. I struggle with it. I'm sure you do as well. This is not something I know all about it. Of course I don't know anything. Now, Saint Arsenie, and I'll finish up on this, I'm calling him Saint Arsenie because I think he's not glorified officially. He says, it is not enough for you to have the prayer. What's he talking about? It is not enough for you to have the prayer. That's not bad English, by the way. It sounds as if it. What is the prayer?
The prayer of the monk.
Yes, the Jesus prayer. It's not enough to have the prayer. That means you're saying it all the time. It is not enough for you to have the prayer. We have to become prayer. Prayer incarnate. As I understand this, that through prayer one becomes prayer. And so your thoughts and everything is, he says that, you know, a smile is a form of worship. Isn't that beautiful? Not grinning at people or laughing at jokes. Who likes jokes? Evil does. You can't hear me. I like jokes. I like humour. Maybe too much. But seriously, when you are living a life, when you're living in eternity, living in the moment, then everything you do, every gesture is towards God, praising God, smiling, whatever you do, moving. This is living prayer. And the person who prays is actually a prayer incarnate. It says there, oh yes, I have to quote, every deed, gesture or smile is a hymn of praise. We need people who experience prayer, not simply people who pray occasionally. Oh dear, that's a judgment on us, isn't it? We need people who are prayer, not people who just pray occasionally. So, may God help us to